Hey everybody, welcome to So Many Sequels, your book club for movies. I'm Josh.
And I'm David.
Leave the gap for Garrett, who is not on the show today. We're doing a Garrettless week on the show. That's the theme. The theme last week was Davidless, and the theme this week is Garrettless. So, I don't know. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
April's weird. April's busy.
Look, April's been a weird month.
We usually take a break in January. I almost advocate we just drill through January, take a break in April, because it's always tough.
That may be a good idea. Because it does seem to happen that spring really kicks into gear, and we're like, whoa, when did this happen?
Yeah.
But anyway, hopefully we will all be back on schedule next week, and you'll have all three of us. So stay tuned for that. Go to SoManySequels.com and subscribe to the show. Subscribe. You can get the video on YouTube and Spotify, or the podcast wherever you get podcasts, and we will be letting you know what our plans for May is there. So go do that. This is the final episode, though, of April and of Book Club Month. We're wrapping it up with my pick, which is Matilda, a 90s classic based on the Roald Dahl book. I believe this is one of the last he published before his death, if I'm not mistaken. I think you had made a note of that, David. It is a 1996, now, in my opinion, modern classic, directed by Danny DeVito. This tells the story of a brilliant little girl with really, really bad parents. She loves books, and she has some secret superpowers that she doesn't even know she has yet. If you grew up in the 90s like we did, this movie was probably a staple in your house. I watched it on a beat-up old VHS tape or on cable. Feel like everybody else probably has the same story with this movie. David, what was Matilda's box office run, though? I have no memories of seeing it that way.
No. Well, Matilda was not what you would call a box office blockbuster. It was a bit of a disappointment in terms of its overall haul. Now, that's not to I'm not diminishing the film in any way, because, as you said, classic status. And that's why often we should talk about, box offices and everything. It's an indicator of some, initial interest, but we'll get into how well Matilda did in its life after the theaters. It opened the weekend August 2nd, 1996, in the number 3 spot with $8.2 million. Just behind, at number 1, A Time to Kill with $13.2, Independence Day in its 5th week with $10.9 million. Just ahead of Keanu Reeves' Chain Reaction with $7.5, and at number 5 was Phenomenon, which was, I think, a John Travolta movie, which brought in $5 million. Its U.S. run, it would only bring in $33.4 million, ending its run shortly before, around mid-November, just in time to hit VHS for Christmas. This is really weird. I can't get any good, solid, confirmed overseas numbers. I'm not saying it didn't open overseas, but Box Office Mojo and the numbers neither record it having any international performance. Wikipedia cites a Variety article from 1997, which claims it had roughly $14 million overseas. So its worldwide total is either $33.4 million or $47 million. Don't know. Don't have the actual numbers in front of me to confirm or deny.
Now, see, we told everybody that we sent you on a mission to count individual box office tickets, and you clearly failed that mission. So
I failed on Matilda, but I was doing it for Sinners.
Oh, that's right. You were doing well, then that's why the tickets are so good this week, I guess.
It was. I found more.
I need you to find 34,000 votes.
34,000. I need you to find 40 million more dollars. Stop the count. Stop the count. It's too high. Warner Brothers is gonna get mad. Anyway.
You gotta laugh.
Anyway, it had a budget of about, $36 million, which, budgets can always, these numbers, you always assume that they're true, but they may not be. So with that 33 U.S. number, it did not make back its budget. It finished the year of 1996 in the number 45 spot. I'll just say right now, we've visited 1996 many times. This is our 11th 1996 film that we have covered for the podcast. Enough to make its own special playlist.
I was going to say, you need to make a Letterboxd list then of our 96 visits.
Yeah.
Make a note of that.
our most recent visit to 1996, I think, was Happy Gilmore last year. We did Happy Gilmore and Twister last year, which were some 96. He doesn't do any hash
You're right.
in the Happy Gilmore, but
right.
he does get angry a lot. One of my favorite 96 films that we reviewed, and Josh, I think you'll share this with me, is First Contact, Star Trek First Contact.
Classic.
And then a sleeper one that we don't talk about enough, The Craft.
That was a really good, fun movie to watch.
That was a good one. But 96, like I said, this was actually an interesting year. 2 Roald Dahl adaptations that year. James and the Giant Peach from Walt Disney Pictures also came out in 96, finishing just a little bit below Matilda on the overall year. Your top movies for that year were, I believe, Independence Day, not in this order, Twister, Ransom, and I can't remember the other 2, so I apologize. I was trying to do that from memory, but I can guarantee you those 3 I said were definitely in the top 5. That is your box office review for Matilda.
Excellent. So Matilda was my pick, and I have to admit that unfortunately I did not get to read the book for this movie. I was the only one who didn't pick a short story, and that may have been my downfall.
You didn't do your homework.
I didn't do my homework. But I'm familiar with Matilda, the movie.
Yeah.
And I ultimately chose it because this is a book that has in the past often been on banned or challenged book lists for schools and libraries. And when I first saw that, I was like, well, why exactly? I couldn't really think of why or remember why off the top of my head, and I looked into it. And on one hand, you have the Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman characters who are objectively abusive parents, and that wasn't really the book. Again, I'm talking about the book. That is also in the book, and people didn't love that. But then also people felt that it encourages children to be disobedient and not to obey their parents.
And it does in a way tacitly condone it.
I was going to say, and I see, while I see that argument, I'm not a fan of banning books. Let me put that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not a book banner in any way, shape, or form. What I think it can encourage children to do, if you are, open with them and talking with them, is really showing them that sometimes they may know what is best for themselves, and they may need to really express that and stand up for it with the adults around them. The adults are not always the smartest in the room, and not all children are ready to hear that message, and that may be part of it. But that's kind of why I picked it. I was like, I do think there is something here that kids need to learn about their own kind of autonomy and independence, and you don't want to be disobedient in a malicious manner. But hey, a kid's got to go to school if she wants to go to school. That kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying. So
this is an extreme scenario.
Yeah. So that's why I picked it. My expectations, I kind of wasn't sure because I hadn't seen it in years. And so I was really looking forward to seeing how many of those challenged elements were still in the movie. And I think a significant amount still are. I don't think this movie was challenged a lot, although I didn't look into it, I have to say. But I think it met my expectations. It was, still a very fun movie to watch, even as an adult. It had a lot of whimsical elements I could get into. I personally like the idea of, I don't know, it kind of gives an adult the ability to channel their inner child a little bit and feel like, yeah, am I being held back by all the people around me? Do I need to, I don't know, make my Cheerios float in, so to speak? Do I need to make it happen myself? I was happy with all that. What were your expectations?
The second you said you wanted to do it, I had to kind of go back in my memory, because this wasn't necessarily one that I watched too often. I do remember seeing it on cable, seeing it promoted a lot. And I remember being kind of creeped out by it a little bit. It's a movie that it does have a lot of those sort of and this is kind of true of the 90s in general. The 90s was dotted with sort of darkish kids movies. You can even look at the other one I mentioned a minute ago, James and the Giant Peach, darkish kind of, these kids are living horrible lives. And I just thought, it made me too sad sometimes to watch all of Matilda. So I was kind of trying to remember back and be like, well, I wonder how that movie, because I wonder how that movie's changed for me now going back and watching it all these years later, because there was a lot probably that I feel like was over my head, I think, when at age 6 or 7. And in fact, there was a whole, a whole new element of this movie that
Definitely.
I wasn't really aware of.
Yeah, I agree. Let's jump into it. This movie sets us. We're open with setting up the life that Matilda has. She's 6 years old, played by Mara Wilson. Great child star from the '90s, by the way. She also did Mrs. Doubtfire with
Yes.
Robin Williams. But we see her. She is living with Danny DeVito and Rhea Perlman, who are just the most miserable people. I mean, their name is Wormwood, which I don't, I hear worm and I go, ugh, worm.
Yeah.
She is mistreated. She's not in school. She wants to go to school. She's really smart. There's even a line where they're like, you'd be in school if you were 6 years old. They don't even know how old she is in the house.
Track of that. No.
What do you? How'd you feel about that opening and seeing them just like not even know this kid's this kid's age, and she's like running the house basically?
It really sets you into it. Really, it does two things. It really puts you in Matilda's perspective. You see how smart she is. She's spelling her name when she's like 4 months old or whatever. Like, and you see how awful these people are, these parents are. Like, Harry Potter can kick rocks in terms of like awful like kid in awful conditions who's secretly a wizard or whatever, because like the Wormwoods were so dumb and so bad at being parents. It's hard to believe they even had the one kid already. They already had an older brother. Like, how did that kid make it? They're not watching this child. So you have no choice but to kind of, even if you're uninvested to begin with, you have no choice but to root for Matilda to get out of this scenario or to get some kind of recognition. And, you kind of, you're rooting for her all along the way. You want her to see her go to school, which is like, if you're a little kid, I remember being a kid and being like, I don't want to go to school. But if it was withheld from me that way, you get it.
Yeah, for sure. The whole reason she even gets the opportunity to go to school is because Danny DeVito, who is Harry, that's who I had, Harry Wormwood, he basically makes a deal with this woman to sell her a car, and we find out that that woman is Miss Trunchbull, the tyrannical principal of Cruncham Hall Elementary School. And he's like, look, as an exchange for the car, Matilda will go to school, and that's the deal. He's still like not really willing to pay for tuition or anything like that. And Miss Trunchbull, unfortunately, is the world's biggest B word, perhaps.
Beyond.
She's like
hyper violent. She doesn't like children, which is
a weird
strange
role for a principal.
Yeah. We talked about when we did the Black Phone, we talked about unreliable adults or and we're in another world of that here, where and this could, in the same lens as when we talked about the Black Phone, could be viewed as a sort of coming of age story with supernatural elements, but it's much more targeted to a child versus probably a more grown-up audience like the Black Phone. Here you have Matilda really has to rely on herself, and she has to be, her own biggest hero. And that's why when we meet, Miss Honey, it is such a refreshing character when Miss Honey is introduced to kind of be Matilda's guide and be Matilda's, hero to an extent.
Yeah, Miss Honey, her teacher at the school, is, the opposite of Miss Trunchbull, actually cares about her and the kids, and she notices how good she is at school and wants Matilda to move up. Miss Honey is like the only adult in Matilda's life who's looked at her and seen not just that she's special, but that she's there, which is sad, you know.
For sure.
How about let's talk about the school, because this is like, I don't know, it is kind of like evil Hogwarts. It's like, I like that this is Harry Potter in America. You think you had it rough under the stairs?
Yeah.
We throw kids out the window here.
No. Yeah, well, if that's best case.
Best case scenario.
Best case scenario, you get thrown out of a 2-story window.
Exactly. It's crazy. I mean, yes, there's rumor that she throws kids out the window. Then she does. There's the poor boy who has to eat all that cake.
Oh my god.
The punishments are insane.
Made me sick.
Oh yeah. How could it not? I actually watched I found this behind the scenes clip on YouTube that had Danny DeVito interviewed and Rhea Perlman interviewed and a couple other people. And he was talking about how that scene was so gross for them to film because he actually got to telling the kid, he was like, spit out the cake. So like between takes, he'd chew up this cake and he'd spit it out. And he was like, it's so gross. But the kid was eating so much cake, he was so sick. They had to tell him to quit actually eating it. And unfortunately, according to Danny, the cake was very good.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, it's fun to see that's real. He was really eating that cake for a while.
You know, this school, because I do come back to, I think that this is, from Roald Dahl's, he's sort of well known for writing children's books. And if you look at like some of the other ones that he's, have been made into popular movies, Willy Wonka, Fantastic Mr. Fox, and, the James and the Giant Peach, he does such a great job of putting these kids in such awful situations that you want to see them get out of. This school is every kid's nightmare of a school. Like, it's dark, it's cramped, it's ugly, it's broad brown, you got an evil principal. Like, you have this secret closet that they might throw you in that's full of spikes and stuff. It's all of your worst nightmares if you're a 6-year-old who's going to school. And it's the kind of thing, it's filled with the urban legends that you might tell in the playground of like, oh man, the school I used to go to was so awful, they actually threw a kid off the roof. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's perfect in that regard. Mm-hmm. So I thought they did a great job in terms of making you feel, instilling that fear.
Yeah. So this is also at Trunchbull. I can't keep it all straight. At the school, this is where Matilda first experiences her telekinesis, and she knocks that water glass over. And then she starts to practice it more and goes home and does that. Has that whole, honestly, kind of amazing sequence where she's got playing cards flowing through the air and she's dancing to, I don't know, that song. It's a famous song. You know what it is.
We know, yeah. Yeah, that song.
Yeah. What do you think the powers really are in this movie? Because I feel like there's got to be something more to it than just a little girl with telekinesis.
That's got, it's a great question because I wish I had really thought about it leading into it. It's I don't know what the power. I mean, I guess the powers in a way. Now I'm just off the top here.
That's fine.
They represent kids feel powerless in general in life. Sometimes, even in a good home, you feel like you don't have any actual power or say in any of the relationships. And maybe subconsciously, there's a reason kids are drawn to superheroes and drawn to fantasy and things like that. The idea of being a child who had the ability to do all this magical stuff just kind of puts Matilda one over the top. It's not enough that she's just a super genius. Mm-hmm. It puts her over the top one extra level. It's another way in which she's not being recognized for her, for how, incredible she actually is. Maybe there's a deeper metaphor than I can think of, but I think it's all part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right, honestly, because I didn't give it a ton of thought initially, but I did start to think about it a little more after I sat with the film for a little bit. And I do think the powers is supposed to be to me, they signal Matilda finding herself. She's finding herself at the school with Miss Honey, outside of her parents' thumb. And the more she leans into her true self, the more magic begins. That's the story that I think is good for kids to hear, and that's why I don't think it should be a challenged book.
No, and as I think about it, her powers sort of come about when she's sort of seeing, for lack of a better word, injustice. Mm-hmm. Trunchbull laying into somebody, her dad being an a-hole, whatever, right? Like her powers, or when her dad's like forcing her to watch the TV, mm-hmm. and it explodes, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's almost like her power. Like unfortunately, nobody in this world is there to stand up for Matilda, and so Matilda has to stand up for herself, and that manifests in these powers, and then she's able to use those to stand up for other people. So it's a very, traditional superhero kind of origin in a way.
Yeah, you're right. And this is, where we kind of transition into this final act of the movie when she starts to realize that she can use these powers to stand up for herself and others. We also find out that Miss Honey had a really hard life growing up, and she actually was essentially taken in and raised by Miss Trunchbull after her parents died. And throughout that terrible circumstance, Miss Trunchbull stole everything that belonged to Miss Honey, her inheritance, everything. And so Matilda takes it upon herself to hatch this plan to try to get her to confess, to scare Miss Trunchbull, and creates this whole haunted house scene kind of thing with her telekinesis powers, and sends Miss Trunchbull on the run. How do we feel about this ending of the story?
Here's one of the places where I want to credit Danny DeVito too, because I think as a director, he had a very good sense of how to create tension.
Yeah.
Because sort of in the build to this, there's a moment where Trunchbull's chasing Honey and Matilda around the house, and she's not entirely sure that that's who she's chasing, and but they're going up and down stairs, they're going through closets and hallways and stuff, and they're trying to get away, and that's all really well done. And then getting back at Trunchbull, I mean, it's what it's an ultimate power fantasy for little kids to get revenge essentially on the adults that make their lives so terrible. But ultimately helping Miss Honey to sort of regain what was taken from her, as also a way of sort of moving Matilda's character forward, because she's had everything taken forward so you could even have it in many ways. Bringing those two characters together through that is a very interesting, good ending.
Yeah, they force Miss Trunchbull out. Miss Honey takes in Matilda because the Wormwoods are basically, they got to run. They're on the run.
Yeah,
they're on the run to Guam because the FBI is after them. Matilda's like, I'm not going with them, so she's going to stay with Miss Honey, and we get this nice little moment for both of them.
Matilda goes and gets adoption paperwork drawn up. And this is one of those things too. It's that simple in a kid's mind. Like in kids' minds, it's as simple as, I had adoption papers taken up. Mom, Dad, you just sign it, and I'll live with this lady who's way nicer to me. Like, that's exactly how every kid thinks. Like,
that easy.
My parents, if they're gonna be mean to me, I'm just gonna go get adopted by my teacher who likes me. Like, that's the mentality of how simple that action would be. But going back to this movie is, I think, mostly aimed at that 6 to 12 range of kid. It's exactly the perfect ending they would want.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, what
can I say? My only quibble with the film, or maybe my main quibble with the film, is I think it's an odd choice to have Danny DeVito be the narrator in addition to also playing Matilda's dad.
I agree. Yes, and it's a good thing we brought up the narrator, because I don't love it. It's another instance of mostly just opening and closing narrator, and
he's all throughout.
Well, I guess that's true.
Mostly, it's a
But
lot.
it
in the
feels
opening act.
it feels so disconnected because it's him. Maybe that's it.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make it doesn't. It's off-putting to have this narrator be like, and Matilda was actually a really smart kid, and the parents didn't recognize her. And then have Danny DeVito come into
Be
the scene
the
and go,
parent.
hey, Matilda, take care of the packages. And then storm out and be like, not this, like because you would be forgiven if you were started watching this movie and your assumption was, oh, clearly by the end, at the very least, Danny DeVito's going to have a change of heart. His character's going to have a dramatic turnaround. He's going to see Matilda for the worth that she has because he's narrating the movie. You know, it's just a very... I maybe they couldn't get anybody else. Danny DeVito is a good narrator for it, but I just think you got to have those two characters be somebody else. You got to have either the dad played by somebody else or the narrator played by somebody else.
I would agree. Miss Honey should have narrated it. That'd make more sense.
That might make more sense to have someone have Miss Honey narrate it. Because the narrator is very warm and very like looking back and saying like how great Matilda is and how special she was, and it's just a very strange juxtaposition within her dad, who's like a swindling jerk.
Yeah.
Who's building Teslas out there.
All right. I think I'm Matilda'd out, so let's get into our... Nah, I kid. But let's get into our final reviews and ratings of this movie. I'll go first. I was really happy that Matilda still resonated with me as an adult. I do remember seeing it several times as a kid and enjoying it. I hope that more kids see it. I know that it was the movie wasn't redone, but the book was adapted into a musical movie by Netflix a couple years ago. So I hope kids still find ways to approach this story and to learn more about it. I think it's good, and I hope it leads them to this movie eventually as well, because it's really fun. So I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars.
I'm gonna land in the same place. It is still a very good movie, but even as a kid, this wasn't like my favorite movie. So I'm gonna land on 3.5 stars. It is the kind of movie that like I'm worried kids of today's generation don't have this pipeline of like the movie didn't do that hot in the theaters, but it did really well on home video and television. I don't know. Kids don't have that avenue anymore. Mm-hmm. It's just not the same. And maybe they do still find movies that way, but
hard to say.
All right. Letterboxd game.
And I have his submission.
Oh, okay. He has a submission.
He has a guest to throw in. So yeah, we are ready.
He's currently in the lead. So what is Garrett's?
Garrett's guest for.
Actually, no. Garrett's not in the lead. I'm sorry. He's dead last.
Oh. Is it still him going first then?
No, it'll be. We're tied. So I guess I won last week. So Josh, I'll allow you to go first this week.
Okay. I am going to pick a 3.2.
3.2. I will say. I'll say 3.4. Or what was Garrett's pick? I guess we should have known that.
We should have started with Garrett's pick for that reason. Garrett's pick is 3.
He also has a
3.4.
Okay. Well, then I'll go right above Garrett. I'll say 3.5.
Okay. So surely one of us is going to win this at
I think so.
3.2, 3.4, and 3.5. Matilda's score on Letterboxd is... Well, none of us got it right, so no dead hits this time. But it is going to be a point for David because it is on the higher end. This movie is a 3.7.
Oh, well, that's great for Matilda.
Isn't that great? That's higher than I thought.
I finally figured out how to do calculations in Excel and Google Sheets. So now I just put in the number and it gives me the math right away. I don't have to do any math myself. It only took me like 3 or 4 years. So that puts me in the lead at 6. Josh, you right behind at 5, and then Garrett 1.
Perfect.
So so this is also a nice little note here. I swept book club month. I got all the book club month picks.
Excellent. Book club month swept and checked. A couple of the more popular reviews for Matilda on Letterboxd were 4 stars. I always thought the low angles were to show the perspective of the child, But then I noticed it was directed by Danny DeVito.
That's messed up. That's not good. That's not cool.
4 stars, Carrie, but for kids. And then finally, 4.5 stars, we are all in love with Miss Honey, right? Yes, of course. Everybody wants Miss Honey to be their teacher. Okay. That does it for us on Book Club month of So Many Sequels. We will...
hang on.
What do you got?
Hang on. I have to mention this.
Oh, mention it then.
Paddington has a review of Matilda.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know.
So, Paddington says, I agree with Matilda. Reading can be such a magical journey, and Mrs. Brown always says a good book can open up so many adventures.
Did he give it stars?
He did no star rating.
Okay. He's a humble bear. He doesn't talk about his ratings. It's not polite.
No, he doesn't. He's not interested in quantifying film for you. He's just going to share his delightful bear opinions. This is my new gag for the whole year, is to check if Paddington has reviewed the film we're talking about.
I hope whoever's running that account keeps doing it. If it were my job, I'd never stop. Anyway, that will do it for us on Book Club month of this episode of So Many Sequels. Go check out our website, somanysequels.com. We've got all of our past episodes linked there, some blogs we've been writing, links to our social channels on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, TikTok, all that stuff. And you can join our Discord there and talk about movies and such with us there. If you watched Matilda or if you've seen it in the past and have thoughts about it, we'd love to hear what you think. So go get on our socials and let us know. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.